Naham prakasha sarvasya yogamaya samavritah mudhoyam nabhijanati loko mam ajamavyayam. I am never manifest to the foolish and unintelligent. For them I am covered by my internal potency, and therefore they do not know that I am unborn and infallible. So thank you to everyone for kindly coming and welcome. So this is the last verse where in a subsection of this chapter where Krishna is discussing about faith and how knowledge is affected by faith. And so a couple of verses back, we see, actually this is not mentioned here, but elsewhere in Bhagavad Gita. But Krishna says that Shraddhamayoyam Purusha, Yoya Chaddasa Eva Saha. Actually, it's mentioned here, sorry. That in this chapter, Krishna also says that, where is it? Shraddhamayoyam Purusha. It should be right here. Can anybody find that? Which verse it is? I'm not able to find it at the moment. Actually, it must be in another chapter. So, Krishna makes this point that the living entity is made of faith. We are entities of faith. Why are we entities of faith? Because without faith, you can't do anything. Found it? Where is it? Oh, you didn't find it. Okay. 17.3. So, okay. That's right. Sattvanurupa sarvasya shraddha bhavati bharata shraddha mayoyam purusha yoya chaddasa eva saha. So, he says, O son of Bharata, according to one's existence under the various modes of nature, one evolves a particular kind of faith. The living entity is said to be of a particular faith according to the modes he has acquired. So, basically, like we discussed a couple of times over the last couple of weeks, to do anything, even to sit in this room, you need to have some faith. You need to have faith. You need to have faith that no one's going to pull out some gun and shoot everybody here. Or you need to have faith that this structure is going to hold up because there's a floor underneath and this floor could cave in. You might not consciously think of these things, but actually we have implicit faith in these kind of things. That we implicit faith, where meaning we don't question these things, because you can't question beyond a certain point. You actually this falls under, we saw how this actually falls under the category of blind faith, because you don't know the person who built this building, you don't know the people in this room, you don't know their history, you don't know their background, and yet there is some level of faith. Okay, it's reasonable because you kind of look up a place or something like that, but many times you actually don't. You actually go in there, it's like, because you can't live life without placing faith to some level. And the reason this is being mentioned in Bhagavad Gita is to emphasize how much we're actually dependent on faith, more than although people like to think that they're very knowledgeable and they conduct everything in a very logical way, we actually depend more on faith than on logic. Because if we place too much emphasis on logic, you can't even live life, because you start to question everything. So, that being said, we require faith even to achieve the goals that we want in life. Most of the time, it is because of faith that we think that a particular activity or a particular achievement in life will give us happiness. Because without that, because again, if you analyze everything very much, you will find that in every activity there are people who are not happy. That can be anything. Somebody is trying to become a doctor. There are so many people who tried to become doctor, and even after becoming a doctor are pretty unhappy about it. Same thing with any profession. Same thing with any achievement, such as an Olympic gold medalist. Or you can take anything for that fact. You might want to go to a particular country. You might want to do some experience. You might want to go rock climbing. Or, whatever, jump off a plane. Or something like this. All of these things, there are people who are not happy with it. So it requires a level of faith to think, well, that's not going to be me. Or how about this? There's so many people who've fallen in love. But then there's so many horror stories about those who have fallen in love. Still, when people fall in love, they think, well, this is special. My relationship is going to be special. Or this is going to work out. That requires faith. Because you start to analyze too much, you can't live life. And so, the fulfillment of desires requires faith. This is the point. We have desires. Why do we have desires? Because we think those desires are going to give us happiness. Okay? If we don't think something is going to give us happiness, we do not desire it. We do not do anything actively thinking that we're going to become sad. In order to become happy, we have desires. In order to fulfill those desires, you need faith. What determines what kind of desires, what determines what kind of faith we have? The kind of desires we have. What determines what kind of desires we have? The knowledge that we have determines what kind of desires we have. This is the point why this chapter is called Knowledge of the Absolute. Because people want to know God, or people want to worship God, they say they want to love God, but you cannot love God without developing knowledge of Him. This is the point. Because to have desire for something, you need to have some knowledge about it. Now, whether that knowledge is perfect or imperfect is another thing. Whether it's complete or incomplete is another thing. But you need to have knowledge. Maybe this could be turned around. The leg is... Okay. So, Krishna, in this verse, when he's saying, I'm never manifest to the foolish and unintelligent, it does not refer to some class of people that are hated eternally by God. This is what I want to make very clear. You take this verse stand alone, it might look like some dogmatic God who just terms some people as foolish and unintelligent, and then cast them, to hell or wherever forever. That is not what Krishna is stating over here. Krishna explains that, go to text 19. After many, many births, so bhaunam janmanam ante jnanavan mam prapadyate vasudeva sarvamiti samhatma sudurlabha. After many, many births and deaths, he who is actually in knowledge surrenders unto me, knowing me to be the cause of all causes and all that is. Such a great soul is very rare. So, whatever desires we have, whatever kinds of happiness we are seeking, whatever things we desire in this world, ultimately everything comes from the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Everything comes from that one God or absolute truth. And it requires knowledge to understand that, because even though people might theoretically think, yes, there is a creator, there is a difference between thinking that everything was created by a person, but then to understand that also all happiness that exists within this world and all the varieties of that happiness also reside in Him. That absolute truth is a little different, because in this world, the creators of the iPhone, Apple, right? So Apple created the iPhone. But whatever happiness I get from the iPhone is found here. I don't have to go to California, right? What is it, Cupertino? That's where they are. So you don't think, oh well, I want happiness from this iPhone, so I'm going to go to Cupertino, because it's not that in the office or whatever the headquarters is that happiness is found. They've created something and happiness is there. So in our material world, there is duality. There is a difference between the creator and the created. There is a difference between things. For instance, there is a difference between the name of an object and the object itself. So there is water. So I was just drinking water. And Water is very satisfying when you're thirsty. But if I say the name water, it will only increase my thirst. The more I say, if I chant water, 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 I'm only going to get more thirsty. If I want to quench my thirst, I actually have to drink this water. And it feels good. So, in this material world, we are used to separating the name or the source of things from the thing itself. Therefore, in this material world, we think, yes, God is the creator of everything, but happiness is here. Happiness is here in this material world. And therefore, I want stuff in this material world to make myself happy. I need to go here, I need to do this, I need to get that, etc., etc. But this is because, as Srila Prabhupada wrote in this very verse, in the purport, he says that all men consider him to be like themselves. Therefore, in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says that but for his pure devotees, all men consider him to be like themselves. So, because people evaluate God according to their understanding within this material world, they don't understand him. And because they don't understand him, they neither desire him, nor do they consider him to be the source of all happiness. He may be the source of all happiness, but right now there's no happiness there. Right now happiness is here. This is what we are thinking. This is an important point to understand, because in the absolute sense, the difference between matter and spirit is that matter is incomplete and spiritual things are absolute. In the spiritual sense, in that which is spiritual, there is no difference between the name, form, quality, activities, etc. There is no duality. There are no two things. In the material world, there is difference. There is difference between the word table and the table itself. There's a difference between water, the word water, and water itself. Whereas in the spiritual sense, this doesn't exist. But we don't know about this. And why do we not know about it? Because our intelligence has not become purified enough to understand the nature of the absolute. We are seeking it. And that's the point. Why are we seeking that? Why are we not happy with the material? Because, as Krishna stated in the beginning of the Bhagavad Gita, we are spiritual in nature. When we are spiritual, because we are spiritual and because we are eternal, we do not die when the body dies. We are not satisfied with happiness that is temporary. Matter by nature is temporary. Why? Because it has been created. It will be destroyed. That which has a beginning and the end is not very satisfying to the soul. But those who are foolish don't understand this. Why do they not understand this? Because they don't know anything better. When you don't know anything better, this is what you keep going. Even when you become dissatisfied with something, you just seek another thing. Okay, that didn't work. Let me go here. Let me go here. Let me go there. But one who analyzes will understand, and the Vedas explain this. It says, one, nobody dies when the body dies. If a cat dies, the soul still exists. It just moves on to another body. It's called transmigration. It's called reincarnation. When a human dies, they don't just die there. Everything is not finished at the time of death. So, different living entities are going all over this universe, and every single day, it's said like, I think every 3 seconds or something like that, a baby is born in the world. Some number like this. That's humans. What to speak of other creatures who can lay so many eggs at one time? Where they living and they can produce like literally thousands in one go. So when you look at this big picture, you start to see souls going all over this universe in different bodies, going everywhere. and doing everything that we can think of possibly. Everything we can think of. So, that the Chaitanya Charitamrita describes that Brahmande Brahmite kono bhagyavan jeev, Guru Krishna prasade pai bhakti lata bij. Or Krishna also explains that in Bhagavad Gita, that Abrahma bhuvana aloka punaravarti norjuna. That the living entity is literally wandering from the highest topmost planet to the lowest planet in this world, seeking happiness of different sorts. So ultimately the living entity is seeking. Now, one who develops knowledge of this, he thinks they're all seeking. Are they getting it? Because if they get it, they stop seeking. Because once you are satisfied, you don't have to seek anymore. But it is not possible to be satisfied in the material situation because the material body ultimately perishes. Because when you're within a material body, whatever type of body that may be, ultimately the soul has to leave because the body cannot, it decays after some time. And it becomes unfit for the soul to inhabit. So the soul leaves, and this is called death. So, it is not possible for the eternal soul who is seeking happiness to be eternally happy. His happiness is always interrupted. It is interrupted with something. It's like you're trying to watch a movie, and there's always some interruption. YouTube does that to try to get you to why do they do that? So that you subscribe to their premium account, because they keep injecting that annoying advertisement of this auto insurance. It keeps coming all the time. Sometimes it's 2 auto insurances back to back saying the same damn thing. And it's like, it's frustrating. Sometimes we've had that experience. Sometimes we're trying to play something on the screen or something in a class, and it's like, you're trying to explain something, and then this thing that blares out in the middle, and it's kind of embarrassing. So interruption is never nice. People don't like to be interrupted. We don't like to, even when you're talking to someone, and someone cuts you in and keeps interrupting, you get annoyed. It's like, why are you interrupting me? It's so rude. It's so you're so full of yourself. Why are you interrupting me? Because interruption is not nice. In fact, in the Vedas, it's very interesting. Shastras say, because animals, they don't seek knowledge beyond what they require to eat, sleep, mate, and defend. Human beings are the ones who are seeking and analyzing all these. What does the dolphin do? What does the seagull do? What does the chimpanzee do? And this and that, and all these different species. And animals are not analyzing anything. Squirrel's probably living around you and doesn't recognize. It recognizes to the extent that it understands where it needs to go and where it shouldn't go. But above and beyond that, the squirrel doesn't care. It's the human beings who are interested in all kinds of things, because human beings are beings of knowledge. We're beings of knowledge. That's why we seek information about so many things. So, because animals don't know anything better, in the Shastra it is said that to interrupt any of the basic activities, including that actually of a human being, of eating, sleeping, mating, and defending, to interrupt that activity, say, a dog is eating or some animal is eating, and you fling a stone at it. It's trying to drink some water out of a creek or something, and you fling a stone at it, and then it jerks and it runs off. That's considered sinful. It's considered sinful because you're interrupting a very basic activity that's required for its bodily maintenance. Similarly, for human beings also. In Vedic culture, if somebody is taking food, you should not say something that is very agitating to them. Even if the news is there, you just wait until they finish eating. Because eating is a very important thing that we should do. Similarly, sleeping. Before going to bed, you don't discuss the most heavy, agitating subject matters so that person is awake at night. And similarly, when Of course, if a person doesn't wake up, that's another thing. But generally, the cultured way of waking up people who know that they have to be woken up is you wake them up gently. And hey, it's like, get up, and you flick the light on, and it's like you rip everything off the bed, and it's like, there's a cultured way of doing things. Because interruption is never liked. It's this interrupting anything that the living entity doesn't like. But if one understands the nature of this material, one will understand that one's happiness is always interrupted by the nature of this material world. Because the nature of matter is that there's always change. There's always transformation. Right? We've learned that in physics. Energy cannot be created or destroyed. It cannot be transformed from one form to another. But the thing is, it's always transforming. And so, that transformation causes interruption. And that interruption is not nice. It's not fun, especially when a natural disaster happens. This thing just comes and wipes everything out from the middle of nowhere. And then you have to rebuild from the start. So, one who develops knowledge, he knows how to channel his faith in a proper way. And when he channels that faith in a proper way, means that he understands that everything ultimately comes from Krishna, and that I have to understand the nature of this absolute. That's why this chapter is called Knowledge of the Absolute, and that's why the factor of faith is being presented. Because Krishna is saying here that I'm not revealed to those who are foolish and unintelligent. But the chapter's name is Knowledge of the Absolute, which means Krishna is not saying that you will remain foolish and you will remain intelligent forever. No, the point is, don't remain foolish, don't remain unintelligent. Gain knowledge so that you can gain ultimate happiness. And that is the thrust of Bhagavad Gita. That's why those who just say, can you show me God? Even if God comes here, you won't understand because you don't know anything about Him. You don't know anything about Him. If somebody has never seen something, they won't understand what it is. They have no experience of that. If you've never seen a cobra, when a cobra raises its head, that means you back off, go away, get out, just leave the place. But you might think, oh wow, this thing is doing something nice. Look, it's dancing. It's preparing itself to strike you. But you don't have knowledge. You think this is wonderful. But death is coming that you don't understand. So, and that's why, children have to be guided. The children, especially those years, it's very important to give them knowledge. Because they have to understand, okay, this is this is that. I'm not supposed to do that. Just a couple of days ago, we found about, 80 yellow jackets, around the temple, along with, was that willow? Black willow. Black widow spiders. And these black widow spiders make beautiful, very intricate patterns of spider webs. But you don't get attracted by them. You think how to get those things out, because it's dangerous. So, knowledge is required for us to understand where to place faith. Without knowledge, we cannot understand. Without knowledge, our desires, there is knowledge because human beings act on the platform of knowledge. But if their knowledge is incomplete, they place their desires in something that is not worthy. Then when they place their desires in something that is not worthy, they cannot achieve ultimate happiness. And they cannot understand who who the ultimate truth is. They cannot understand who God is. And to such kind of persons, Krishna is not manifest. He's covered by his Yogamaya Pota. They may talk about God and this and that, but ultimately they don't understand it. They come up with all kinds of misconceptions about God. And their idea of God is also transforming with every passing age, with every passing generation. And so people think, actually you probably don't know anything about him, because you're always like having some kind of new opinion. But the knowledge that is presented in the Bhagavad Gita is very scientific, and Krishna will present some of that knowledge in the next verse. And ultimately, just skip to text 27, 2 verses later. Oh, you turned it off. Okay. So, Krishna says, 27, he says, O scion of Bharata, O conqueror of the foe, all living entities are born in delusion, bewildered by qualities arisen from desire and hate. So, there are always, all living entities are born in ignorance, all living entities are born in delusion. So, we might have been foolish and unintelligent, but Krishna, the point is, literally in the next verse, he says, persons who have acted piously in previous lives and in this life, whose sinful reactions are completely eradicated, are freed from the dualities of delusion, and they engage themselves in my service with determination. So those who recognize that have acted piously in previous life and in this life, and whose sinful reactions and sinful actions have been completely eradicated, they worship Krishna. So the point of Krishna consciousness, and this is why when you come here, we're chanting Hare Krishna, but we also teach, to give up meat eating, to give up intoxication, illicit sex, gambling. Why? Because there has to be some improvement in life also. Without some improvement, without eradicating sinful activities, it is difficult to cultivate knowledge. Because the mind is too disturbed. We have to calm the mind. We have to calm the mind for the intelligence to work. If one is constantly agitated, you cannot think. How can you think? When one is extremely hungry, it's difficult to focus on something, because all you're thinking about is you want some food. Or when someone has a bad headache, you can't think. You can't do anything. So the idea is that we have to develop a life where our life becomes less agitating. Therefore, we are able to think and we are able to cultivate knowledge so that we can achieve the happiness that we have been seeking for unlimited lifetimes. And this is what Bhagavad Gita is teaching us. This is that process. And so, the emphasis is not about seeing God, but is it about hearing about God? Because when you hear about God, you can see Him. We can develop the vision to see Him. When you hear about something, you can develop the vision to see it. When you don't hear about something, you see something, but you don't see it. The last point I wanted to mention here is that there are so many wonderful things in this world, in just this world, that we cannot recognize, we cannot understand. So many unexpected things. Like I saw recently a video of a column of ice within the ocean. That's pretty amazing, because it's surrounded by water and there's ice. That water should melt the ice, but it doesn't. So this happens in Antarctica, where, the ice above melts. And because that, when the ice melts, the water is cooler, it tends to form a column of ice that comes all the way down to the seafloor. And when it touches the seafloor, anything that it comes in contact, and then it forms a river of ice inside the sea. And anything it comes in contact, it completely freezes. So all these, starfish and all these kind of entities, they get completely frozen in its path. And the reason that happens is because cold water is more heavy than warmer water. So it tends to sink and then it remains clumped together because there's a constant flow of cold water from above, the ice melting, and it forms this column. It's a very interesting thing. The thing is, when you see it, then you analyze it and you understand it. But before you see, you cannot even conceive of such a thing that can exist. And there are so many things in this world that are just completely like mind-blowing, and there's so many things that we still can't explain. I mean, there's so many things about human achievements that we can't explain in the past. Okay, how was the Stonehenge built? Don't know. These big rocks, they had no crane, nothing. This huge thing placed on top of, two other rocks. How can you explain that? There's so many things actually. We still don't know how the pyramids of Giza were built, how the temples in South India are built. There's one temple, the Tanjavur temple, has got this big stone of granite, which is about, I think, some 40, 50 tons. It's one big piece of stone placed right on top of the temple, and the temple rises like the shikar, the structure of the temple, rises about 12 stories high or something. This big 15-ton rock placed right on top of it. How did they get it up there? What did they use? We don't know. There's so many things that are wonderful in this world that we still have absolute no knowledge of. We see it, but we don't understand anything about it. What to speak of God, from whom everything in this world has come? It is not possible to simply understand Him just like that. Therefore, one has to take knowledge from Krishna as revealed in Bhagavad Gita. Because Krishna Himself is presenting about Himself. Then we can understand. Then it is not difficult. If we happen to meet the person who actually built these things, then they can explain how they actually did it. And then okay, that's how it happened. But until then, you cannot imagine. It's not possible to conceive of that. So in this way, Krishna is very wonderful, and those who are devotees, they pray to Him. Krishna, please reveal yourself to me. Because ultimately that's the devotee's desire, to be able to understand Krishna, to be able to interact with Him. Why? Because the devotee is in Krishna consciousness. We are trying to develop a relationship, or revive our relationship with Krishna. That's the platform of love. You want to love God, you have to have a relationship. To have a relationship, you need to know about the person. And the goal of that relationship is to interact with that person. And serve, of course. Okay, I'll stop here. Any questions or comments or objections? Yes. Give the mic.
Hello again.
Hey. Welcome.
Thank you. I was wondering if you could further explain internal potency. I think I get it, but I wanted to know what that meant.
Okay, that gets a bit technical. So there are, like even physics is discovered, energy cannot be created, it can only be transformed from one form to another. Right? Energy is not created or destroyed. It's very interesting because they can't explain how that they themselves say everything came from a Big Bang. And that contradicts their own theories. Not theory, that's actually a law of physics. That energy cannot be created. It can only be transformed. But they contradict their own laws because they don't understand. So, it's true, energy is eternal. It's eternal because Krishna, God, is eternal. We are one of His energies, and we are the marginal energy. There is the internal energy, and then there is the external energy. There are three kinds of energies. The external energy is this matter. This external energy is inferior to the energy that we are. Therefore, we are able to dominate this energy. Yet, we are not the owners of this energy, even though we're able to dominate it. For instance, I can dominate the neighbor's house, but that doesn't make his house mine. It's still a criminal thing to do. So similarly, even though we, the living entities, are allowed to manipulate this nature as a whole, we cannot understand fully because material nature is bigger than us. And we are but by nature we are superior to her. We are superior to matter, material nature. Now then, above us is the internal energy of the Lord, the internal potency. And this internal potency is Krishna's spiritual potency, by which there is spiritual variegatedness in the spiritual world. The material matter and variegatedness that we see here is a reflection of that spiritual variegatedness. So it's like you see a painting of something. So if you see a painting of a coconut tree, that actually means the coconut tree exists, or better is a reflection, right? You see a reflection of a coconut tree. That reflection is possible because there is the actual existence of a coconut tree. The reflection also has variety in it, in the sense that the reflection is different to everything else that's reflected around it. So there is some form there are some colors and things like that. Still, the source is from the internal. Now, this internal potency also constitutes the desire of the Lord. And the Supreme Lord does not desire to associate with those who do not want to associate with Him, who do not want to know Him. So, just like anything that is valuable, anybody that's important, anybody who has some level of dignity doesn't want to associate with those who don't want to be with him. They don't try to force themselves on other people. If you force yourself on others, like, what kind of a person are you? It's like, I don't want to be around you. It's like, So, Krishna is like that. God is merciful, God is all loving, and He wants to be with us, but He's not going to force Himself. So that desire of Krishna is His internal potency. And because Krishna is most amazing, His internal potency, He doesn't even have to consciously think it. His internal potency makes all kinds of arrangements to prevent those or cover Himself from those who don't want to see Him. And that's the point. But at the same time, that very same internal potency, when the living entity takes shelter of, that internal potency reveals Krishna to that living entity. So this is further subject matter that is discussed in the Srimad Bhagavatam. Krishna explains the principles in Bhagavad Gita, but that is the answer to that.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions? Anything else? Okay. If there's not anything else, we can end here. Again, thank you very much for coming. Hope to see you again next week. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Yeah. Request everyone to kindly go downstairs. Feast will get served out down there. Hare Krishna.
Yes, yes.